Vrouwen.
Yes, I got that one.
So, we're here in Amsterdam, a lot of beautiful women.
Yes.
Is that the reason why you love to come to Amsterdam?
I I love Amsterdam, the city, for all of its delights.
And apart from the women, what are the delights of Amsterdam for you?
It's a beautiful city, beautiful city. It's so vibrant and alive and open.
Good energy.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent place. Yes.
In America, do you live in a city like Amsterdam, or is it very
There is no city like Amsterdam in America. I live outside of Los Angeles by the sea, and it's a very beautiful spot.
quiet, or
It's quite heavily populated, but the sea is always quiet.
okay? And in the town you live in, or the city,
Yes.
are people interested in this message?
A few, everywhere in the world. Always a few.
But sometimes when you go shopping for groceries, someone stops you in the aisle of the milk and says, Mr. Liquorman, can I ask you a question? So and so, or is it not something which is talked about at the supermarket?
It is not something that is talked about at the supermarket, and I certainly don't offer it anywhere. I go where I'm asked. I answer when I am asked, but I am not here to tell anyone how to live, what the truth is.
So this is not something like spread the word, tell everybody
Not
the
at
great
all.
mystery is revealed.
If I had the truth, I would offer it. But I do not have the truth. I can only point to it.
So there is something like the truth, or
There is a fundamental underlying reality or truth, but it is not knowable in the way that we normally think of knowing something. But it is here. It is what we are. It is what enables us to think and feel and act, talk, breathe. There's something here.
yeah,
And it is that which the teaching points to, that which is here.
but it's not something you can grasp,
It is not something you can grasp.
or you can point to, like, that's it.
That is it. Everywhere you point
That
to
also.
is it.
Yeah.
It's all it.
Yeah.
See,
So you can't make mistakes if you talk about this, or can you?
in a relative sense, you can always make mistakes. In an absolute sense, everything is as it is. So it depends how you define mistakes.
Yeah, but do you sometimes listen to other people talking about this, and you think, oh, no, stop, or
I don't listen to other people talking about it, because once you've eaten the meal, there's no sense in reading the menu.
it's a great one-liner. But people like Eckhart Tolle, who's visiting Amsterdam also in a month, 500 people pay 100 euros to hear him talk in essential about the same, or not? Is it different for you?
I've never heard Eckhart Tolle speak. I've never read anything he's written, so I have no idea about him.
Yeah. But he points to the power of now, the thing. But is there such a thing as now? Can you point to a now, or?
Well, I don't know. I have no knowledge of what he means by now or any of that. You know, I can only talk to you about what I talk about.
Okay. When someone comes up to you and tells him, I have a huge problem, you go inside the story with him or her, or you cut off at the first point and say, it's all mind stuff, there's no problem. It is as it is.
I have no formula, so there's no, this is how I deal with it. I deal with everything on a case-by-case basis. I call what I do the living teaching, meaning it's alive in this moment. And it springs forward from this moment.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any doctrine or dogma, and so this is what, you know, Wayne says about that.
Yeah.
What Wayne says about that depends on who's asking the question in that moment and what comes forward.
Yeah. So it's a responding.
It is a response.
Yeah.
It is a living teaching. It is happening now.
Yeah. So you must be open to everything and everybody, or do you shut down at a certain point?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, I experienced some opening, or how do you call it, that you are very open in a sense that nothing goes, what's the right English word, unseen. You capture everything, which is...
I wouldn't say I capture it, I would say I accept it. So what is here is accepted totally as being here.
Yeah.
And so there's no resistance at the level of how it should be or shouldn't be.
But is it all experienced, or is it just there and it's left there? Or
Both. It's all there, and this body and this mind experiences a fragment of what is here, as does every body and mind.
But could the total be experienced, or are you experiencing the total? Or?
No, the total is not a thing. You can only experience something. The total is everything. So it's like saying, can the tongue taste itself? It becomes meaningless. Of course the tongue cannot taste itself.
Yeah. So
because it's not separate from itself.
Yeah. But people call this, when they visit you, an experience.
Oh, they may well have experiences.
But it isn't an experience visiting a talk done by Liquorman, or...
Of course it's an experience. It may be a good one, it may be a bad one, but it's an experience.
Yeah.
Some people leave quite changed and moved, and others can't wait to be out of the room. So.
Yeah. Does that happen often, that people can't sit down on the chair, and when the first break they run out of the hall?
Of course it happens.
And what is that? Is that the mind resisting this message, or
we can give it? We can tell all kinds of stories about it. What we can say is that that person was certainly not interested or ready to hear what was being said.
Yeah.
And I have no judgment on that, on them. And certainly don't characterize it as some kind of spiritual retardation or...
Yeah. You don't say, you're wrong, I'm right.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Because it could be very painful for the ego. I've been at your talk about 2 years ago, and there was one guy sitting in front of me. He was getting very, very angry by the minute, and then he just left. He said, he's just being a popular guy there. He couldn't take it. But what I've experienced with some people, they realize that the ego isn't the one doing it all. It's just thinking that it's doing. And that is a very painful thing for a lot of men and women, I think. So maybe that's one of the reasons that a lot of people don't like hearing what you are talking about.
Well, it's always been a teaching that is for, a relatively small percentage of the people, traditionally. And this all can change tomorrow, but so far that has always been the case. And my guru, Ramesh Balsekar, he was, when he was alive and for the last 20 years, was the premier living master of this particular teaching by general agreement. Not everyone agreed, but most people would agree that he was the guy. And at his talks that he gave every day in his home, the most ever that were there were 70 people. And then, at the height of the spiritual tourist season in December, there's 70 people there. And during the rains, 5 or 10.
All right.
This is the premier teacher of Advaita in the world. This is the premier teacher of Advaita in the world. Yes. And this is what, this is what's there. So, as long as it's kept purely that, its appeal is to a lot fewer people. Now, when you mix it with how to live your your life, how, to manage your relationships, how, to have good sex, how to be happy, how to do this, how to do that, how to meditate, how to be in the now, how to be there, how to be here, then you can broaden the application to it, and many more people will come. But when it's focused purely on this question of who is authoring, what is it that is actually at play in the world, what is it that makes you do what you do, what are you at bottom, what is the essence of your very nature. When you're involved in these kinds of examinations and questions, the audience and the appeal is always quite small.
But still, there's a recognition in this time of YouTube and internet. A lot of young folks they feel there's a truth or something.
Yes.
So
yes.
Could you call it a recognition which can be explained, or if you want to put a word on it?
I would say that always there is, the YouTube and the internet, of course, makes the teaching available quite readily, and so it's accessible to whoever might have some interest. And that has changed things a lot. Mm-hmm. What I call the false sense of authorship, which is this sense that human beings get at the age of 2.5, which is the point at which human beings start to suffer. At 2.5, the sense, I am a authoring entity, meaning I can make things happen from my own body, mind, mechanism. I am the source of things. That sense that develops at the age of 2.5 has to work itself out. And for most people, even when they start to get a glimpse of a spiritual awakening, a spiritual opening, that they have some kind of insight, be it through drugs, or through meditation, or through yoga, or through talking, whatever. They get a glimpse of it, and an interest is kindled. As long as this false sense of authorship is present, it will want to know what it can do. What can I do to reach it, to make it happen? And there's a lot to do. There's all of these teachings and meditations and methodologies and processes to do, yeah, and which have their impact and their effect, all of them. So when you're young, particularly, the attraction, and there's a lot of energy also.
You want to learn stuff.
You want to learn, you want to do, you want to be there, and you want to develop community around it, and all of that, and it's there in those things. And so most young people get, I'm not going to say siphoned off, but I'll say siphoned off, get siphoned off into all of those pursuits. And then you work through them over the years. Mm-hmm. My observation of the people who generally get to me are older. They've done the meditations, they've been to the teachers, they've been to India, they've been to the ashrams, they've done it, got the t-shirts, done it again. And now have exhausted the doing. They
give up.
The giving up happens.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
The giving up happens not because they've come to some conclusion. It's just they're exhausted. There's just like, I can't get it up to do another retreat. I can't get it up to do another, sitting session. I just can't, and so the fact is that they've extracted there's a lot of juice in that stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of insight to be gained. There's a lot to know. There's a lot to feel and experience. But you can only get so much out of that. And then there may be the opening to go the other way, which is to go from getting more power, spiritual power via these things, to true powerlessness, to surrender, saying, okay, maybe I can't get it, maybe I can't do it, maybe there's something else happening here.
Yeah.
At a real fundamental level, not just a mental conclusion, but just physically, I've given it my all, and now here I am. And it's that level of receptivity that I find the most exciting when people come to me.
Yeah. Could you say that spiritual search is the same search with getting a lot of women, earning a lot of money, thinking I have to have a bigger house, bigger car?
Sure.
The same mechanism?
Yes. There was a old yogi, quite a character, Chongyam Trungpa, as I recall. I may have mispronounced it. But he wrote a wonderful book called Overcoming Spiritual Materialism, I believe. And it was a very interesting premise, because what he was basically saying was that most of us approach spirituality in the same way that we approach the world, which to acquire something, to get spiritual understanding, and to get really spiritual power. Because what you come to a point where you realize that you can't control things. I mean, you try and control them, and you can't. So the conclusion is, well, if I can't, but God or consciousness or source is controlling everything, what I need to do is get align myself with the power. Then with my brains and God's power, we can really do something. You see?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, then that's a very strong motivation for trying to get this spiritual thing.
Yeah. I got the whole cabinet at home with all the books, the DVDs, and I never look at them again. But yeah, it seems that what you say, getting stuff, getting knowledge about this.
So what I'm saying is that is often the first step in the process. That most people can't circumvent that. Some can.
Inside that.
So that, well, what I'm saying is they can't go around it. They have to go through it in order to get beyond it. Yeah. And of course, some never get out of it at all. But that activity of spiritual materialism is a very normal and usual stage in the process.
Of course, because when you grow up and you want to be a good soccer player, you have to practice a lot.
Right.
After years of practice, you'll be a good one.
Yes.
And now you think, I've got to be enlightened. What should I do?
Yeah.
It's a really normal question for a human being to ask.
That's right.
Yeah.
Of course.
Then you are there to tell them it's the other way around.
Would you say the message gets smaller and smaller, or the message disappears? Because you get a lot of practice. Watch your breath, stay in the moment, visualize the secret, stuff like that. And then suddenly the message is, this is it. That's nothing you can think about.
Right. Well, I'm not really interested personally in a message at all of this, that this is it, surrender, be here now, accept. I'm not interested in delivering a message as much as inviting people to look for themselves. I'm not interested in delivering a message as much as inviting people to look for themselves. Say, okay, look here. This is, and pointing the way of a place to look to see, perhaps, where the truth lies. And
no certainty.
No certainty. Absolutely not. There's no certainty in the phenomenal world at all. The only certainty is change.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But could you say that's just love, what you're bringing here to Amsterdam?
If you're being kind, you can say you can call it love. You can call it openness, acceptance, peace, truth. I mean, there's a million words for it.
But doesn't it happen that a lot of women in the audience, they think that this human being is the one and get excited and maybe fall in love with you or write you tons of love letters, or
does that happen?
Yeah.
That has happened over the years, of course.
So the mind tries to grasp it and says, he's the one, or...
I mean, there's all kinds of explanations and stories about people's relationships, men and women, with the guru. And it takes many forms. Sexuality is simply one form, but we as human beings have a sexual component to our nature. So it's only natural that be part of life, part of whether it's your spiritual life or your daily life.
But isn't the search always the search for love, for oneness, wholeness, love, whatever you want to call it?
Certainly we could call it that.
So you could say you bring love to Amsterdam.
I don't think Amsterdam was lacking in love prior to my getting here, actually.
Everything is love, yeah.
But you sometimes see that people are really damaged in their childhood or got traumas.
Sure.
I've noticed that when you start being busy with non-duality, all these things will come up. You've been holding them underwater, all these balls, all over the years, and suddenly there's this space that everything is okay, and they pop up. Do you see that often with people?
To some degree, yes, but it's not, since that is not really the focus of my teaching. That is simply seen as another arising, phenomenal arising, and isn't given any more weight than anything else. That the real thrust is not in that arena. And so when those things arise, I suggest that people speak to a qualified therapist, of which I am not. And so I mean I can't help them with those sorts of things because I'm simply not qualified to do it. My role is in pointing them in an entirely different direction.
Yeah, that's sometimes confusing for people, maybe, because you're telling it's already here, it's nothing you are doing, it's simply happening. And then going to a therapist is something you do.
Yes. Well, that's actually not my message. What I'm saying is that you do it. You do it. You don't author it. And so I'm making a much more subtle distinction than you'll normally find in the broad non-dual talks where you're not the doer. I'm saying that you do things.
Yes.
You do things, all kinds of things, and you will be held responsible by the society for what you do.
Yes.
Perhaps, not necessarily, but very often. The real question is not so much about the doing, it's about the source of the doing. Where is this doing coming from? Who is authoring this doing? Clearly there is a me doing it. And I'm very comfortable using personal pronouns, I and me.
Yes.
Because there is a Wayne here that does things, that's talking now, that has that does all kinds of things. It has relationships and has experiences of all kinds that are unique to Wayne. What is really at issue in my non-dual teaching is what is the author of what happens.
Where is it from?
What is the source of that which I do? Is it local? Is Wayne the source? Or is Wayne the instrument through which the entire universe is functioning?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really the question that the teaching is raising.
Yeah. But if you look at the microcosmos,
Yes?
those little ants,
Yes?
who all go about and do their thing,
Yes?
it's obvious that they're an instrument which is, we call that nature, we call
Yes.
it instinct.
Yes.
Why would it be different with a human being? Isn't nature the perfect example of that?
It is a perfect example of that. But, and here's where it all gets very interesting and quite complicated, at the age of 2.5 in human beings,
We get an intellect.
you get, no, it's not you
No.
get an intellect, you get the false sense of authorship, which claims the intellect. The intellect is a feature of the body,
Okay.
and it will continue even after, quote, enlightenment, even after the false sense of authorship dies. The intellect continues. It's not the source of the separation. It
Nothing
is
wrong with the intellect.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, without it, you have difficulty functioning as a
Yeah.
human being. Okay, so the intellect is functional. So in an attempt to home in on what it is that is bringing about human suffering,
Yeah.
because that's what we're really talking about. What is it makes us suffer? Life is pleasure and pain. There's no getting around that. If you're alive, you're breathing, you will have pleasure and you'll have pain. You'll have joy, you'll have sorrow. You'll be up, you'll be down. Exactly. That's going to happen. But what is it that converts this into suffering? That's so if you can like home in and just kind of laser in on what is it that is actually doing the suffering. It's not the me. It's not, identity, really. It's this quality that claims the me, that claims the identity, that claims the mind, that claims the intellect and says, I am that.
Mm-hmm.
And I call that the false sense of authorship, or the FSA for short. So when you begin to see that it is this FSA, this false sense of authorship, that is where the suffering is coming from. This is a huge first step in having that whole mechanism disappear. Because first, you've got to see that it's even there. Because it is so insidious in its claim on your identity that for most people, they're just one thing.
Yes.
You see? It's not seen that they're two. It's thought to be one thing. And that's why so many teachings say, you must be rid of the me.
The person. Yeah.
Because they're just saying, okay, this is where the suffering is coming from. So you got to get rid of it.
But you can't.
But you can't. You can't unless you're going to be sitting drooling someplace without any sense of identity, any knowing who you are, where your house is,
Yeah.
So what we're really talking about is somehow seeing that there are two components in the me. There is the functional me, the identity of who I am, and I do things, and I have a history, and there is this additional, this false claim of authorship, which claims that which the functional me is doing. It says, I'm doing that. I'm in control.
Yeah.
But of course, it's not. The functional me, which is an expression of the universe, through genetics, through the conditioning of the organism by its environment, all of which is happening through countless influences. Through genetics, through the conditioning of the organism by its environment, all of which is happening through countless influences, and is constantly happening, constantly changing. That is what's doing everything. But it's this false sense of authorship which is claiming that doing.
Yeah.
And this is what this teaching is pointing at.
And when that is seen?
When that is seen, it is the first step in the weakening of the claim. First, it has to be seen that there's a claim there at all. Mm-hmm. Then, as it is exposed for the imposter that it is, its power to claim is reduced.
Yeah.
And that process is one that is quite mystical, quite magical in how it unfolds. But within these kinds of talks and these books and these kinds of things, which this is where that is exposed. And then we see what happens.
And then someone puts up his finger and says, yes, but what about the responsibility? That's the question that always comes around.
That's always the question that comes up first.
Yeah.
Because the false sense of authorship says, I am the one who is making you good. I'm responsible.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's making you get up and go to work even when you don't want to go to work.
It's good that I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. Without me, you'd just be a lump laying in your bed
you would do nothing.
And you would do nothing. Yeah. That's the claim.
Yeah.
But the real question is that true? Because if it were true, we would all be saints. We'd all, I mean, we'd all act in accordance with our values.
Yeah.
Not forget society's values, our own. We have things we know are wrong. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not right to hurt people you love. You know, to be unkind to them and to yell at them and be impatient with them. And we are all the time.
It still happens.
It still happens, even though we know it's wrong. So how is it that we do this if we are in control, if our sense of responsibility is keeping us on the straight and narrow? Yeah. So maybe this activity, what we do, is a product of something else. That's just maybe. And this is what the teaching introduces, the possibility that what motivates us, what moves us, what activates us to act as we act and do what we do is something far broader than our own egoic selves, this claiming me.
Yeah, the claiming me. It's a good pointer. So then it's seen, Wayne is still there, still acts the same, or can you
Wayne is in constant flux. Wayne is changing all the time.
You can't say, oh, that's typical Wayne, or typically Wayne.
There are certainly behaviors that over a course of time someone would say, that's typically Wayne. But actually over the course of my life, there's all kinds of behaviors that have changed considerably, dramatically, immensely. And others which have persisted. Now, some of those that have persisted this long can change tomorrow.
Yeah.
So anything can happen.
So you haven't designed a perfect Wayne for yourself. I should be like this, or Wayne should be like that.
Blessedly not.
But that's what society tells you.
Yeah.
They first tell you have to make a good person out of yourself, and then stick with it.
Yes.
But it always, you feel...
And that's why you suffer.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the power to do it. They tell you you have to, you see, you felt like you had the power since 2.5. When this happens at 2.5, what happens is the body, the organism, feels, I'm powerful. I can make things happen. I can do it. I can do it. And then it picks out, you say, okay, I'm going to cry and make my mommy come. Come here.
It works.
And I cry and my mommy comes. And you say, oh, look what I did. I am so powerful. You see, I can control things. Then you cry and your mommy doesn't come. And suddenly the universe is out of order. You see? Now, up till age 2.5, you would cry, your mommy would come, you're happy. You cry, your mommy didn't come, you're sad. After 2.5, when you feel this, that I'm doing it, that this authoring me is doing it, then when she doesn't come, suddenly, not only don't I like this, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Now suffering sets in because the universe is out of order. It shouldn't be this way. It should be as I make it, not as it is. And this distance between as it is and how it should be is suffering.
Mm-hmm. And mommy doesn't love me anymore. Yeah. Last question. You talk about children. This is something we all have to go through, or apparently?
So far.
Yeah.
So far, it
Yeah.
is a human characteristic that happens regardless of culture, regardless of race, regardless of where on the planet you're born. At 2.5, develops this.
Is that so? If you would raise a child, let's say, for example...
Forget
jungle-
if. I have no idea
okay.
about ifs.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
We talked about it before. Say I have a child, I go to the jungle and raise it all naturally. It's still, yeah, you don't know.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Try it. Find out. I don't know. Try it and find out. But so far,
Yeah.
in the jungles, in the deserts,
Yeah.
in the mountaintops, in the cities, at 2.5, so far, human beings at the age of roughly 2 to 3 develop what I call the false sense of authorship.
I think they're steering the wheel.
Yeah.
But still there are graduations because children at the age of, let's say, 8, here in the Western world, when they don't get the toy in the toy store, and children at the age of 8 in South Africa, they have joy in a junkyard.
Yeah, but that's a difference in programming. That's not a difference in involvement by the false sense of authorship. That's just what they like and don't like. You see, it's the sense of what should or shouldn't be, how it should be or it shouldn't be, is related to how I think it should be. Now, if you're programmed, you're brought up in a junkyard, you know, in the poorest of the poor, there's no thought I should be able to manifest my, you know, a shiny new truck.
Yeah.
You know, if you're here in an affluent family in Amsterdam, then you may well think, well, my friend has a shiny truck. These people all have shiny trucks. Why can't I have a shiny truck? I should be able to have a shiny truck.
The same mechanism still.
Same
But
mechanism.
it's not thought, you say.
No,
It's something
it's
that
the
arises.
claiming. It's the claiming of how it should be, how I should be able to make it happen.
But isn't it seen by the child, the way the parents act, or isn't it something that is...
Oh, it's constantly reinforced by the parents, by the society. Everything says you, your school, your church, everything says you should be this way. You must be good, you must act this way, you must control yourself, and you have the power to do that.
Yeah,
You should visualize.
Whatever. You should fill in the blank. And that ties in to the false sense of authorship. It feeds it. You know, reinforces it. But it's already there.
yeah.
And it's very rare that a crack forms in which this loosens.
Yeah.
And the possibility comes into being of another way of seeing.
So we don't have to blame society, the way our parents, the way we're raised at school, or could we say it's all part of the mystery that brings us up?
I mean, blame away, whatever, you know, whatever floats your boat. But
It's nice to blame someone.
Yeah, I guess, you know. But the true understanding lies far deeper. And what makes the parents do what the parents do? What makes the society do what it does? The same thing that makes you do what you do. There's something animating the whole process.
Yes.
That's what this teaching is pointing at.
Yeah. It's nice to see that the way you were born into this world, you didn't have to do anything to choose if you were a boy or a girl, or if you had 5 fingers or blue eyes or whatever. It just, then from the moment that, I don't know how you call it in English, but
cut the umbilical
Yeah.
cord, yes.
Yeah, okay, I'd take over from here. It's, or a couple of these.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That's absolutely correct. Suddenly, you are now the master of the universe,
Yeah.
with no recognition whatsoever that you have been of all that you're given
Yeah.
constantly,
Yeah, you get everything.
starting with your breath.
Yeah. With
You are
one
given
particular-
your breath.
Yeah.
You're not responsible for it. You don't make it happen. Even when you forget to breathe, you breathe. And the breath is what enables everything else. It enables you to be.
Yeah. This thing.
And still they say, I am breathing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.